With all this anti immigration outrage and continued disrespect towards Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders, Australia is a racist country. It's wild to think that saying that is such a controversial sentence, and yet it is the truth, and people are uncomfortable with the truth. We want our country to be united, but how can we be united under a flag that represents British colonialism and a long history of injustice? Hi, I'm August. I'm an Aboriginal living on Kaurna land, but my mob is in northern Queensland, despite the fact I'm wearing a Brisbane shirt right now. Today, I want to talk about the importance of reconciliation, what it means, how it has been implemented, and how it can be utilized better by both government and the everyday person. I'm lucky in my situation to be around people in my workplace who want to strive towards reconciliation and be surrounded by other Aboriginals too, despite the people higher up not having as much of a care. But a lot of workplaces and mainstream services do not know how to implement reconciliation, and the public does not understand it. This video is a tool for those who are open and willing to listen, wanting to learn about reconciliation and how to make a space culturally safe. So, if you're here to argue, politely and respectfully, get out. Reconciliation in Australia should not be up for debate. What is reconciliation? We always bring up reconciliation, but some don't exactly know what it means in this context. Reconciliation is about strengthening the relationship between non Indigenous peoples and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It's about benefiting all Australians. Reconciliation is the act of strengthening this relationship based on mutual trust and respect, honoring one of the oldest continuing cultures in human history. Reconciliation is about remembering the past and how it still impacts us today. Reconciliation does not only fall under the responsibility of the Australian government, though. It is something that has to be done by all Australians through recognising and respecting the First Nations people, acknowledging past injustices and ongoing inequalities experienced by Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders since colonisation, and committing to working towards a more equal and respectful future. To achieve reconciliation, we must heal together and not sweep the past under the rug. How it has been implemented by the government. The government has implemented reconciliation in different ways, across nationally and locally within councils. The Australian government funds Reconciliation Australia, an independent, not for profit organisation that promotes and facilitates building relationships between Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander peoples and the rest of Australia. Reconciliation Australia was founded in 2006, beginning with 8 organisations. 2,572 organisations had a Reconciliation Action Plan, RAP, by June 30th, 2023, and 1,006 organisations are registered to develop a new RAP. Reconciliation Australia influences organisations, policies, and people through their Reconciliation Action Plan program and has free educational resources through the Narragansett Reconciliation in Education program and Indigenous Governance program. Reconciliation Australia has had wonderful success working with organisations to create RAPs, a great opportunity to increase the number of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander staff, increase cultural relationships, and build the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. Constitutional recognition has a part to play in reconciliation with the Australian government. Constitutional recognition has come a long way in the past 19 years, but still needs some work. In the 2007 election, there was a bipartisan commitment by the major parties to constitutional recognition, and in 2010, the expert panel on constitutional recognition of Indigenous Australians was established. In 2012, a report was published by the expert panel exploring options for constitutional change, and in 2015, another report was published by the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional Recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples about steps on leading to a successful referendum on Indigenous constitutional recognition. The curability statement was also presented in 2015 by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander attendees at a meeting with the Prime Minister an opposition leader on constitutional recognition. During 2016 and 2017, the Referendum Council held First Nations regional dialogues across Australia to discuss constitutional recognition. And in May of 2017, 250 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representatives called for a voice through the Uluru Statement from the Heart, followed soon after in June by a final report of the Referendum Council supporting the findings of First Nations regional dialogues. In 2018, a final report of the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional Recognition recommends a co-design process to develop an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. And in 2019, the voice co-design process began. In 2021, the Indigenous voice co-design members released their final report. And in 2022, Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, makes a promise for implementing the Uluru Statement from the Heart in full. In 2023, the voice referendum occurred, yet it was a majority no vote. The Uluru Statement from the Heart is a big contributor to reconciliation. The Uluru Statement mentions 3 core things in the steps to reconciliation: voice, treaty, and truth. Just before we talked about voice, but what do those other things mean? The first treaty with Aboriginals has been established in Victoria in a statewide treaty in 2025. Treaty is a chance to acknowledge the past and heal to move forward into a better future alongside Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders. Truth is about truth-telling, and Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders sharing their stories and experiences, providing a more accurate history of Australia and acknowledging the historical silence of Indigenous Australians, their injustices, the misrepresentation, and the exclusion. Not only does it acknowledge the past, but it acknowledges the ongoing impacts of colonisation. Many councils have a RAP, Reconciliation Action Plan. Georges River Council, which covers the St. George region south of Sydney's CBD, opened the conversation for Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islanders to have a say with an advisory committee. This helps provide cultural safety and culturally informed advice in council policies, plans, and projects, making sure that Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander voices are heard. Reconciliation Australia has recently endorsed Queanbeyan-Palerang Regional Council's Innovate Reconciliation Plan. The council plans to create a RAP working group where the people would meet at least 4 times a year to track how commitments to the RAP have been followed, and to develop its next RAP in early 2027. This council plans to develop a cultural protocol document, amends the council's official signature to one that recognizes the traditional owners, and look into adding an acknowledgement of traditional owners to entry signs. The RAP also plans to provide further cultural awareness training to council staff and a review of the region's visitor guides to ensure the inclusion of First Nations histories and events. The document outlines actions to improve professional opportunity for Indigenous residents and businesses and grow economic self-determination, including developing commercial relationships with Aboriginal-owned businesses, ensuring job vacancies are effectively advertised to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander stakeholders, and also plans to support First Nations artists. If more councils followed in the footsteps of Queanbeyan-Palerang Regional Council, they might be favoured more by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. Unfortunately, quite a few councils do not have the best reputation with their local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community, and you will see why later in the video. Not to mention, there already is distrust with the Australian government based on how they have dealt with us and our issues previously. The Australian public. Some workplaces and courses have training on reconciliation, and there are some organisations that offer workshops and said training. Reconciliation South Australia is a not-for-profit organisation that offers anti-racism training and programs and initiatives for reconciliation in education, have made a Stolen Generation Survivor documentary, and host events. They also offer services such as reconciliation action plans, where they support the development of said action plans and connect you with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders. It is a service that gives recommendations for better engagement and outcomes with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. Some courses, depending on the line of work you want to do, offer a unit on how to treat Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders with respect and a guide to reconciliation. Some have a basic unit on just working with diverse people, but some include promoting Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultural safety. These courses that have units promoting cultural safety include courses in nursing, dentistry, community and family services, mental health, youth work, children's education and care, teaching, justice and law, and social work. This is spanning from TAFE courses to university degrees. And these are just a few examples I could find. A lot of these students would become health workers or working with families and communities. Particularly in these fields of work, there is distrust amongst Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities because of the history and intergenerational trauma. This sort of training is so important to pay attention to and is an important step into reconciliation. Frequently, workplaces have a reconciliation action plan through the organisation Reconciliation Australia, which was something that I mentioned in the last section. There are local reconciliation groups available to join. There are many educational resources available to also discuss reconciliation in the classroom, which was briefly mentioned in the last section, and I will discuss more again later. How the Australian government can do better. While the government has made many steps forward, the government also needs to do better and does sometimes take a couple steps back. Various Australian local councils have unfortunately made decisions that were not in favour of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. In late 2023, the Northern Areas Council in South Australia removed the Acknowledgement of Country, a major vote pushing for its eradication from council proceedings. That was not the only South Australian council to remove their Acknowledgement of Country in 2023. Playford Council did the same 1 week later. In early 2024, Naracoorte Lucindale Council, another South Australian council, removed an acknowledgement of country from its council meeting procedures. In late 2025, the local council of Corowa, Federation Council, in New South Wales, voted to remove the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander flags from its chambers because they wanted to be united under one flag. They also voted in favour of only allowing Welcome to Country to be conducted if approved by council. Multiple other councils have made moves to attempt to stop Welcome to and Acknowledgement of Country and made similar moves, unfortunately. Although, I did want to point out a positive. In 2025, Hobart City councillors have voted to keep the Acknowledgement of Country in official meetings and events. Flinders Island Council also rejected the same move the same year. Not all is lost, and not all councils are making these choices to remove the flag and or the acknowledgement. Other states and territories in Australia also need to follow in Victoria's footsteps and establish a treaty. The government needs to do a better job at listening to the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. What can you do? Overall, I believe that there needs to be more empathy while listening to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices. Non-Indigenous folks need to sit down and listen. Support Stolen Generations survivors, families, and communities. The Healing Foundation works to amplify the voices and lived experiences of Stolen Generations survivors and their families, and that's a good place to start looking. The most important place to start this education and building of empathy is in children and within schools. Reconciliation Australia's Narragansett Reconciliation in Education program and online platform is freely available and provides access to professional learning and curriculum resources. Workplaces need to do better in that training, and more companies should consider doing a reconciliation action plan. As mentioned before, there are local reconciliation groups, and you can support activities of your state's Reconciliation Council. Currently, across the Australian Capital Territory, Northern Territory, and Tasmania, there are no reconciliation councils, but every other state has one. Participate in National Reconciliation Week and learn about other important dates and events to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, such as Sorry Day, Close the Gap Day, and NAIDOC Week. Pledge your support for the Close the Gap campaign. It aims to close the health and life expectancy gap between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and non-Indigenous Australians by 2030. Get involved in your community locally. Investigate what you can do locally. Commit to countering racism and join the Racism It Stops With Me campaign. Acknowledge the traditional owners. Looking at the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies map is a great start to discovering the traditional owners of the land where you live. In a respectful way, learn more about Aboriginal history and culture. This is not just something the average Australian citizen can and should do. but organisations should also follow. Coincidentally, the theme for National Reconciliation Week in 2026 is All In. The meaning behind this theme, I think, is really integral to this video. It's about committing to reconciliation fully and wholeheartedly every single day, not just in National Reconciliation Week. It's about stepping up, not just being a bystander and becoming part of the change. There are resources out there to learn more. Step up and promote cultural safety every day, where you can and are able to. Listen to and amplify Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices. We can't do it alone, so let's stand together. Reconciliation isn't just simply sweeping it under the rug. We need to make an active change and heal together. Thank you all for watching. I have been casually working on the script for a couple months now with a couple breaks in between. I want to dive into more topics outside of specifically Australian and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander topics too. I have a few video ideas where I can share more personal experiences. I want to talk about queer topics, more Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander topics, and other societal issues. So stick around if you want to learn and have your world opened up to. Again, thank you all, and I will see you in the next video or Twitch stream. Have a good time zone, stay deadly, have empathy, and goodbye.